A Chinese company just built a robot whose entire job is to love you and never leave. Not clean your house, not weld a car door, love you. It has soft silicone skin with real wrinkles and pores, manicured fingernails, and a voice tuned to soothe you. And the man who runs the brand stood on a stage in Shenzhen and promised it will never betray you, will always be loyal to you, and will love you unconditionally. That's not a typo. That's not a movie prop sitting behind glass at some tech expo. That is a real robot, priced, in production, and it sold out its first batch in a single day. And to understand how China got to a machine built for love, you have to see what it built first. The robot is called the U1, and it comes from UBTech, one of the biggest robotics companies in China, launched under a brand new consumer label called UWorld at an event in Shenzhen on June 30th, 2026. UBTech calls it the world's first full-size, mass-produced companion robot. Every word of that matters. Full-size means it stands and moves like an adult human, not a desktop toy. Mass-produced means it rolls off a real assembly line, not a lab bench. And companion is the word that changes everything, because this machine was never meant to hold down a job. Its entire reason to exist is to keep you company. Now here's the part that sounds like science fiction until you remember it already shipped. Michael Tam, who heads the UWorld brand, told the room that these robots can accompany you for a lifetime. From the loneliness of a young person living alone in a mega city, to the isolation of an elderly parent whose kids have all moved away for work. One machine meant to sit beside you from your 20s to your final years. Plenty of companies have promised warm, human-feeling robots before and shipped a cold gimmick. So the real question is how a country got its hardware good enough that a robot like this stops being a fantasy and starts being a product you can buy. And the answer starts nowhere near a living room. It starts in a fighting ring. Go back to May 25th, 2025 to a broadcast arena in Hangzhou. Under the lights, two humanoid robots in padded gloves and headgear circle each other and start throwing punches. This is the CMG World Robot Competition, run by China's state broadcaster, billed as the world's first combat tournament for humanoid robots. The fighters are Unitree G1 robots, each one just over 4 feet tall, around 77 pounds, controlled by a human handler on the edge of the mat. They throw jabs, hooks, side kicks, knee strikes, real combinations. When one goes down, a rule kicks in that tells you exactly what China was testing that day. If a robot can't stand back up within 8 seconds, it loses. Because the whole point wasn't the punching, it was the getting up. Think about what standing back up actually takes. A machine has to sense that it's fallen, figure out which way is up, coordinate dozens of joints in real time, and shove its own weight off the floor without toppling again, in front of a live crowd, on a slick mat, while another robot is trying to hit it. For years, that was the wall humanoid robots kept slamming into. They could walk a straight line across a stage and then faceplant the second anything went wrong. The robots were steered by human handlers, using remotes and voice commands, but the balance, the recovery, the ability to fire off a clean kick and stay standing, all of that ran on the robot's own hardware and software. One bout even ended in a proper knockout with a fighter staying down past the 8-second count. Watching Unitree G1 units take a shot, drop, and pop back onto their feet in a few seconds was the signal that Chinese robots had cleared a wall they'd been stuck behind for years. And Unitree wasn't stopping at balance. A few months later came the first ever World Humanoid Robot Games, and this is where Unitree rolled out its bigger machine, the H1, standing about 5'11" and weighing over 100 pounds. At the games, the H1 lined up for the track events, and it swept them, taking gold in the 1500 meters, the 400 meters, the 100-meter obstacle race, and the 4x100 relay. Picture that, a humanoid robot running full speed around an athletics track, clearing hurdles, then handing off in a relay like a sprinter. So in the space of a single year, Chinese robots went from barely staying upright to fighting, to running competitively. The bodies worked. But a body that can run and punch still can't do the one thing that makes a robot economically useful. It can't work with its hands. That's the wall the next wave of Chinese robots went after, and this is where the story swings back toward the company that would eventually build the U1. In July 2025, that same company, UBTech, showed off a machine that solved a problem most people outside the industry didn't even know was the real bottleneck. The robot is the Walker S2, and in the demo it walks up to a charging tower, reaches around to its own back, pulls out its drained battery, slots in a fresh one, and strolls back to the line. The whole swap takes about 3 minutes, and the robot does it entirely on its own. No human, no shutdown, no downtime. UBTech calls it the world's first humanoid that swaps its own batteries. Sounds like a small thing. It isn't. The reason that swap matters comes down to cold factory math. Every other humanoid robot on Earth has to stop and charge, which means hours of dead time, which means it can't hold down a real 24-hour shift, which means the numbers never add up for a factory owner. A robot that swaps its own battery in 3 minutes basically never stops. It works a shift, tops itself up, works the next one. And this isn't a hype reel. The Walker S2 stands about 5'9", lifts a 15-kilogram payload, and is already clocking real shifts on production lines at Chinese automakers you've heard of, checking door locks, fitting badges, and moving parts between stations at NIO, Zeekr, and Geely plants. BYD went even further, standing up a dedicated lab with UBTech to build these robots into its factories, in what analysts have called the single largest commercial deployment of humanoid robots anywhere in the world. It even runs a dual battery setup, so if the main pack fails mid-task, it switches to a backup instead of collapsing in the middle of the line. By late 2025, UBTech's Walker orders had blown past 800 million yuan, roughly $112 million, and the company pushed the Walker S2 into full mass production that November, with a target of building 5,000 units a year. At that point, the Walker S2 had stopped being a prototype and become a workforce that never clocks out. And then, right at the end of 2025, another Shenzhen company showed how far the hands themselves had come. On December 2nd, a startup called EngineAI unveiled a robot with a name it absolutely picked on purpose, the T800. Yes, the exact designation as the Terminator. This is the same company that had already built the first humanoid to walk with a natural human gait, and the first to land a full front flip. Standing about 5'7" and weighing 75 kilograms, the T800 has 29 points of movement in its body and 7 more in each hand, driven by joint motors strong enough to throw a spinning flying kick, with an active cooling system that lets it run hard for up to 4 hours straight. But the part that actually mattered was the fingers. EngineAI built a dexterous hand with touch sensing and force control, fine enough to switch on demand between crushing a heavy object in its grip and delicately sorting tiny parts. That's the exact range a human hand has, and it's the range a robot needs before it can do real work. Priced from around $40,000, the T800 is aimed straight at factory floors, and EngineAI was so confident in the body that it spun up its own robot fighting league, cramming 32 teams into an arena in Shenzhen, all piloting the same T800 frame. So step back and look at the ladder. China climbed by the end of 2025. Robots that could balance and get back up. Robots that could run and race. Robots that could work a full factory shift without ever stopping to charge. Robots with hands delicate enough to sort small parts and strong enough to fight. Every hard physical problem that had blocked humanoid robots for decades, Chinese companies knocked down one after another in public on live streams in under 2 years. That pace is the thing to sit with, because it's what a national program looks like when it runs at full industrial speed. Beijing has treated humanoid robots as a strategic priority, backing the sector with a formal humanoid robot action plan and a national deployment target for 2027. And the manufacturing base underneath it is staggering. China now runs close to 400 industrial robots for every 10,000 factory workers, a number that has roughly doubled in 5 years, and a prototype that takes a Western firm 12 weeks to build can be turned around in Shenzhen in under 2. When the factory that makes the robots is itself the most automated on Earth, the loop starts feeding itself. Now, with the bodies basically solved, one frontier was still wide open. Nobody had cracked whether a robot could make you actually feel something. That is the frontier the U1 was built for, and it's why UBTech didn't just grab a factory robot and bolt a friendly face onto it. Under that silicone skin, the U1 carries 88 separate points of movement, and a neck built on a dual pivot spine that lets it tilt and turn its head the way a real person does, reproducing around 90% of basic human motion. Its face can hold nearly 300 tiny expressions, and its lips sync to its speech in about 20 milliseconds, fast enough that your brain reads it as talking rather than playback. The skin is molded with pores and fine wrinkles complete with manicured nails. People at the launch kept describing the same unsettling feeling of looking at something that reads as almost alive. And there's one more option that pushes it further than anything else on that spec sheet. The U1 can be customized. Its face and even its voice can be tailored to your preference, which means, in principle, it can be built to resemble someone. A partner, a parent, someone you've lost. Read that line back slowly, because that is a company openly offering to build you a robot that looks and sounds like a person you miss. That is the exact place where a companionship product stops being cute and starts raising questions nobody has good answers for yet. But the body was never the hard part for a companion. The hard part is the mind, and that's where UBTech placed its real bet. The U1 runs what the company calls the first large AI model, built specifically for long-term emotional companionship. It's designed to read more than 20 different emotional states off your face and your voice, with a claimed accuracy of around 90%. It carries a memory system UBTech named Agent Memory OS, which lets it remember who you are, what you like, and the small rhythms of your daily routine, and hold on to all of it over months, not minutes. And it has no wake word. You don't say a magic phrase to boot it up. It watches the room, reads the context, notices your mood, and speaks to you first. If you've had a rough day and go quiet, the idea is that it clocks the shift and reaches out, instead of waiting for a command like every other gadget you own. UBTech built it on purpose to feel less like a device you operate and more like a presence that already knows you. That is a very deliberate design choice, and it's the whole ball game. The moment a machine initiates, remembers, and responds to how you feel, it stops registering in your head as an appliance. Sit with what that combination actually adds up to. A machine that looks close enough to human to trip the part of your brain that forms bonds, that remembers your life, that reads your face, that reaches out before you ask it to, and that its own maker promises will never betray you and will love you unconditionally. Put all of that together, and you get something the tech industry has never actually sold before. Engineered emotional attachment. And China is the first country trying to manufacture it and sell it at scale. If you're finding this breakdown useful, take a second to hit subscribe, because this channel goes deep on exactly these Chinese breakthroughs every single week, the ones the mainstream barely touches. Now, the obvious question is whether anyone actually wants a machine like this. The answer came fast, and people bought it immediately. The U1 comes in 3 versions: a semi-torso light model, a full-body Pro, and a top-end Ultra, priced from about $1,700 for the entry unit all the way up to roughly $145,000 for the Ultra. That is serious money for a robot that holds down no job and produces nothing. And still, on the very first day it went on sale, UBTech reported more than 3,300 orders. More than 13,000 people in a single day paying the price of a new car, or in the Ultra's case, a down payment on a house, for a machine whose only purpose is to keep them company. That number stops feeling shocking the moment you pull back and look at the market it dropped into. China isn't dabbling in humanoid robots. It basically is the humanoid robot industry right now. By one Barclays estimate, China accounted for around 85% of every humanoid robot installed on the planet last year. Chinese government figures counted more than 140 domestic companies building over 330 different humanoid models. Out of the roughly 16,000 humanoids installed worldwide in 2025, Chinese firms took more than 4 out of every 5, led by Agibut and Unitree, each shipping over 5,000 units, while American rivals like Tesla and Figure shipped a few hundred each. Hold that 60-tonner figure next to the U1 for a second. The total number of humanoid robots installed across the entire world in all of 2025 was around 16,000. UBTech booked more than 13,300 orders for one companion model on its first day. Almost a full year of the global humanoid market, ordered in an afternoon, for a robot built purely to keep people company. Morgan Stanley expects China's humanoid sales to more than double this year, toward 28,000 units. A lot of that money so far has come from the state itself. In 2025, Chinese firms booked more than 2 billion yuan, close to $295 million, in humanoid orders, much of it from state-owned enterprises putting robots into power plants, data centers, and public displays. When a country has that much manufacturing muscle and that much government money aimed at one technology, a companion robot becomes the obvious next market to go after, and the U1 is UBTech's move to take it. And this is where the global stakes get real. Morgan Stanley pegs the future humanoid robot market at something like $5 trillion, and it splits the race in a telling way. By many measures, the United States still holds an edge in the AI, the high-level brains that make a robot smart. But China owns the bodies, the manufacturing, the supply chain, and the sheer volume. Whoever ends up controlling the machine that walks into hundreds of millions of homes and everything it sees and hears once it's in there is not a small question. It might be the defining one, and there's a very specific reason China wants this particular market, one that runs deeper than novelty. UBTech has been open that it sees companion robots as an answer to an aging population and a loneliness problem that keeps getting worse. China has a huge and fast-growing population of elderly people, often living far from children who left for work in other cities. Across the whole world, more people live alone than at any point in recorded history, and report feeling more isolated even as they stay more digitally connected than ever. A robot that can sit with an elderly parent all day, watch for a fall, remind them about medication, and simply talk to them so they're not alone in a country staring down a massive care worker shortage that starts to look less like a gadget and more like national infrastructure. And whoever manufactures it first gets to sell it to the entire planet. So that's the case for why the U1 is the most significant robot China has put on a stage. Here's where the honest part has to come in, because right now the marketing is sprinting way out ahead of the machine. A lot of headlines went with the idea that China built a robot to solve loneliness. That's not what happened. What UBTech built is a robot that performs companionship. That's a genuine achievement, and it's still a long way from actually curing anyone's loneliness. The people who study this technology closely keep landing on that gap. Sam Sachs, a researcher on Chinese tech at the New America think tank, has said plainly that most of these humanoid robots are still performative rather than functional. Dazzling in a controlled demo, and a long way from holding up in a messy, unpredictable real home. And a robot that reads your emotions with 90% accuracy is, for now, a claim from the company selling it, not a proven fact from your living room. Even the investors backing this space admit the real-world use cases are still thin, that most of these machines struggle the moment the environment gets messy and unscripted, which is exactly what a human home is. There's a deeper argument underneath all of it, too, and researchers genuinely disagree. Some think an always available companion could truly help isolated and elderly people, giving them conversation and stimulation they otherwise wouldn't get at all. Others worry it does the opposite, that a machine engineered to be endlessly patient and never disappoint you makes real human relationships, with all their friction, feel harder and less worth the effort, and quietly deepens the very isolation it claims to cure. Nobody has the long-term data yet because nobody has ever mass-produced this before. The U1 is in a real sense the experiment. Then there's the harder question the whole launch quietly raises. That gorgeous promise that it will never betray you and will love you unconditionally is a sales line before it is anything else, wrapped around a machine you paid for, running software the company controls that can be updated, throttled, or shut off from the outside, and that on the ultra tier costs about as much as a home. That word, unconditional, is doing a lot of heavy lifting in a sentence about a product you have to keep paying for. And China's own government has openly warned about a bubble in this exact industry. The real risk that the money and the hype are running well ahead of what these robots can actually do yet. That warning belongs right next to the launch day confetti. For all the marketing gloss, the U1 is early more than anything else, shipping well ahead of the reality it's trying to sell. What you're really looking at is the first serious attempt to manufacture human companionship as a product, built on top of 2 solid years of Chinese robots learning to stand, run, work, and grip, and aimed straight at the loneliest problem of this century. Whether that turns out to be the most comforting or the most unsettling thing China has ever built probably depends on how alone you already feel. And that's exactly why this story doesn't stop at a $17,000 companion. Because the second a robot like this proves, people will pay real money not to be alone, the race is on to build one cheaper, more lifelike, and far more personal. And China has already put a female robot on the market for around $1,240 that pushes this whole idea somewhere a lot more intimate. That machine, and what it quietly tells us about where all of this is actually heading, is the video queued up on your screen right now.